Welcome everyone to our City Council meeting Monday, March 14th. Madam Clerk, can you call roll call and establish quorum?
Bob Thomas? Here. David Mitchell?
Here.
Joyce Eller? Here. Terry McClellan?
Here.
Vicki Schneider?
Here.
James DeVito?
Here.
We got 6.
All right. I pledge allegiance.
Stuffing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I forgot to turn this off.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'd like to see if we could add the issue under new business number 5, B&B licensure in residential zones.
I'll second that.
And residential?
Zones, yes ma'am. In the historic district, if we want to expand it out.
Business.
This would be number 4?
5.
5, ma'am, under new business, if it's the same. Thank you.
Okay, well, I have number 4 postponed. Is it? Okay, well, Chris, this is...
Last thing under new business.
This is the first draft you send me. I just make notes. I don't reprint them as you send them to me.
There you go.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay.
All right, get a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. Get a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, additions, deletions? If not, all those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. Under our commission, we've got an application from Barbara Dix for the hospital commission that will be under consideration at the next meeting. Barbara Dix, it should be in the application in your packet. Barbara Dix has been a resident of Eureka for over 35 years and been interested in being on the hospital commission. And
I have it in my box.
so if you got any questions, you can just give her a call on that. She's been involved with the city for a long time, off and on. Also, we got an application too from in Parks for position 1 from Barry Reed. His application should also be in your packet. So, and I think you've also got a letter of support in there too from one of the Parks Commission members. So, and then the cemetery, we have from last time, I think we had an application from Steve Vorbeck. Who need to get a motion to approve to be on the agenda.
Make a motion.
On the commission.
Second.
All right.
Make a motion to do what?
To approve
I
Steve.
make a motion to approve,
Steve, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Is he renewing?
No,
No.
I think we had his application the last time.
Oh, okay.
He
Okay.
has
Yeah.
been a visitor here for eons and is now living here and is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor of Steve, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Because we've got a, I don't know whether I've told y'all or not, June Westfall, longtime resident of Eureka and commissioner, resigned from the cemetery commission. So we really only have right now 2 members with Steve. That would be 3. Who's the third? I'm trying to think. We got
Peg?
Oh, Peg. Peg was on, Mary Jane, and Steve. Mary Ann, rather. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if it's not out of line, Gloria Stevens has been on it before,
Right.
and so she's, requesting to be back on. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve her for
I'll second.
Cemetery Commission.
That was going to be my suggestion, if we could
Ah.
go ahead and do that. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you suggested that. Since she had already been on, if we could just kind of waive the 2-week period, so they would have at least a quorum to be back on there again.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
All right, do we have any further discussion or comments? If not, all those in favor of Gloria being on the Cemetery Commission, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, guys, very much. No, we had that clarification. We had that taken care of. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, from the minutes even. It said it was okay.
Sweet.
All right, public comments? None? All right. Well, we're going right on to unfinished business then. Ordinance number 2239, adjusting the fees. I think Mr. Weaver has a comment, and I think he's caught it, and I'm glad he did. Mr. Weaver, you want to talk about what you found on your ordinance that we need to address?
Yes.
Wait a minute, before we do that, can I get a motion to
Yeah.
discuss?
So moved.
Second.
All right, sorry. Mr. Weaver?
This was an ordinance, and I'm not sure who drafted it. I think it may be one that the fire department put together because they had put together one of these previous a few years ago. But when you look on the third page of the document, down toward the bottom it says interest charge, and it says 5% per month. 5% per month would violate Arkansas constitutional law, I believe. And so I'm not sure. We tried to find today who had drafted this and see if there was a reason why they use 5% per month. But the chief is unavailable, and we weren't able to track anyone down. But I would suggest before you pass this on your third reading that you do something to adjust 5% per month. Because that'd be 60% simple interest per year, and actually by doing it per month, it'd be compounded interest, so it'd be more than that.
Well, how is it supposed to be worded?
Well,
Per year.
I would think that it would probably meant to be per annual or per annum.
that would be my guess.
Okay.
Pre-judgment interest in Arkansas is typically 6%, and post-judgment interest is typically 4%. So that's kind of in the middle of those two. And so I think 5% per annum would be much more likely to stand up a little bit of scrutiny. And the relevance of it was if we were to pass it at 5% per month, it carries as a penalty, if anyone ever challenged it, you have to pay them back double the interest, plus you can't collect any more interest on that debt. Plus, you have to pay attorney's fees, so if some attorney laid out there behind the log for a year or two, he could get some pretty fantastic fees if we accidentally passed it the way it is. So I think, I suggest you use 5% per annum.
Mr. Pettis just came in.
And he may know more about it, I don't know.
Well, that's a shame, because here we are trying to raise revenue, and you're sitting over there.
In the short term, it might raise lots of revenue. In the long term, I'm afraid we'd end up paying some attorney a lot of money.
So do you want us to make a motion to make that correction?
Mr. McClung has
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Bugsy Siegel working in our best interest, but I drafted that. But I think what I'd like to do is make a motion to go ahead and read ordinance number 2239 by title only, to suspend the rules and read it by title only. So we can do that, and then we can make the amendment to the maximum interest rate allowable per law. That's not part of my motion for now, but the motion is to go ahead,
Why would
suspend,
why not?
because we need to go ahead and do that, and then we can change it, you see?
just procedures.
Oh, I see what you're
Procedures.
saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you the second on
Put
that.
it on the table, basically.
Yes,
Okay.
Read it.
right. Yeah, it's not to approve it, it's just to read it.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion is, motion is second to just read it by title only.
Yeah, suspend the rules, read it by title.
Right. Okay. Do we need a roll call?
Ms. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Eller.
Yes.
6-0. Ordinance number 2239, an ordinance amending Section 2.44.09 regarding fire and EMS fees and permits.
Mr. McClung.
I would like to make a motion to amend ordinance number 2239 to read the maximum rate allowable by law. Would that suffice, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, I believe that would. If we change that exact wording,
The rate fluctuates.
it does.
Okay.
Second.
Let me, since our Assistant Fire Chief is here, Mr. Pettis. Yes, sir. We had on page 3, what we're discussing under interest charge down at the very bottom of the page. You might want to come up here so we can hear you on the mic, please, sir. Before you came in, the city attorney noted that what we were trying to charge was 5% per month interest.
Yes, I see that.
And that would amount to about 60% annual, which isn't legal.
That's a little high.
A little high. So is there...
So do we need to get a billboard and cash your check here? And,
Yeah. So what we were doing was changing that to the maximum allowable interest. Was that...
Thank you. I think that's a good correction.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
All right. We got any other questions or comments? Okay. If not, then all those in favor of the amendment as read, we need a roll call or just voice vote?
Be roll call.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Eller.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. DeVito.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. McClung.
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. Now we need a motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
Good.
Move to approve ordinance number 2239 on its third reading as amended.
Second.
It's his turn.
Oh, it was second, his turn.
Ms. Eller.
Yes.
Mr. DeVito.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. McClung.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
6-0.
All right, thank you. All right, the ordinance passes, and I know we were trying to raise money for the ambulance, but we couldn't do it that way. So, good try. All right, thank you. All right, under new business, we've got a recommendation on the food trucks from the Planning Commission.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
We have a chairman here. Would the chairman like to come up and give us a... We have your notes, but...
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Beecham, the chair of the Planning Commission, and we were asked by this table to make a recommendation about the concept of food vendors as mobile trucks and trailers operating in the city of Eureka Springs, and we got several clarifications from the council over exactly what we should do, and so we've sort of simplified this to just the statement that I think is presented to you tonight, but we would certainly be welcome to pursue any other information other than that. But I think just to give you some background on what our recommendation, why we came up with that recommendation, is that we divided the commission up and searched all the commercial available, or all the city-owned spaces in C2 as well as C1 zones. In C2, basically it's the parking lot at Plainer Hill, and that was canceled by the head of transit because of our federal contract, I think, with that parking lot. So there really is not a public space or a city-owned space in C2 that we were aware of. In the C1 zones, we sort of narrowed it down to, I mean, other than parking spaces, which is such a premium in this town that we just kind of hated to lose parking if we could help it. We were looking at the music park down at the end of Main Street near the train station, and thought that that might be a good location for one or more of these forms of business. And in the process of looking at this, we noticed it's being parked in quite a bit every day, and on weekends it's parked almost full. And in looking at the sizes of the trucks as well as the trailers, if a truck is pulling a trailer, it would be about at least 40 or 50 feet long worth of space that would come out of that park. And if you had two of them, then that's quite a bit of parking that would be eliminated from a parking area. And so we sort of thought, well, that's not really going to work. And so the more we discussed it, the more it seemed like this is really more of an issue to take place on private property, with the council coming up with restrictions based on the issuance of the business license is sort of what our approach was on this. But anyway, that's kind of where we were and what our thoughts were on it. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions. Yes.
Did you take into consideration size limitations, or evening, evening specific possibilities? Did you look at either of those?
Well, the size specification was a big part of what we were looking at. I mean, if we were looking at, say, using say it was a truck and they could park on one of the parking spots on the sidewalk in town, they would have to have their business open towards the sidewalk itself. And we were concerned about the level of congestion that might create. A lot of the cities that we were comparing this to, Fayetteville for instance, have a whole lot more space than we do. I mean, we're just kind of a unique situation. The other spaces that we had looked at were, the parking lots that are city-owned here by the auditorium as well. And our concern, again, was just losing a parking space, because not only would it be a space where the unit was parked, it would probably influence the parking space next to them and possibly even on either side of them. In terms of off hours or slower hours, I think one of the suggestions that we had heard that came through the meeting at the auditorium was the possibility of having them set up here in the auditorium parking lot, say after 9 on weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and just be open late into the night. And we saw no issue with that, but we did not recommend that as our. But it would be a possibility. Whether or not you could actually have a viable business just operating at those hours, at those days, I don't know. But that would be, of course, the vendor's issue. But
Thank you.
yes.
Okay, so, and after that meeting, I sat down and talked to Glenna about the various things. So my understanding is, if we wanted to do it downtown, it would have to be on private property, not public, which our parking lots are public, which would leave North Main, and if you want it close to downtown, it would be North Main in the 2 privately owned parking spaces, parking lots, and you'd have to get permission from the parking lot owner. Epley is one of them. If it was on Friday and Saturday night only from 9 p.m. until 1 or 2 in the morning, then there wouldn't be a parking lot problem, because we aren't filled up with 5 tons of parking. And so that could be down here, but we would have to do some law changing, because we've got the only during the festival thingy law, ordinance, whatever.
The peddlers, I think.
Yeah.
ordinance.
So this is what it all boils down to. And I'm going to reiterate again from the first time I brought it up, if we do this, we need to make it a franchise and have very strict measures on time, place, days. Not just a free-for-all. We need to specify in this area, on these days, from this time, and only allow 2 or 3. So we don't affect our brick and mortar. So even up in C2, which is the highway, it would still have to be private property and permission. That's basically what this all boils down to.
Terry, did you have a...
No, I'll let somebody else.
James?
Come back.
I think we ought to keep focused, as long as we have Steve here. This is going to end up in another workshop. We're not going to solve anything, so while the chair is here, I think we should be specific in our questions regarding what planning has recommended, because there's a lot of other considerations that I don't even want to start discussing right now.
David?
I concur with that, and because there are a lot of variances and concerns. I do like the fact that Steve went out and got the Fayetteville ordinance specific to the establishment of food trucks, food trailers, etc. And there was some good thoughts in there. Everything. I'm a little shy of franchises because we seem to not do so hot with franchises, and recent history in franchises definitely seem to prove that. So, but the thought that they had when they did a lottery each year and everything was most interesting. And I think it's something you'd want to explore in a workshop. So, and I know some people want council to say, well, you know, we're for food trucks or we're not for food trucks, so that we can progress on. But I think that would be a little bit premature, because the real issue is to look at the whole concept of food trucks. We need to look at the detail first.
Joyce?
Well, let me sum up then what the Planning Commission came up with. What did I hear you saying? That there were really only 2 areas of public property of concern to the city where it might be possible to do food trucks, and that would be the auditorium parking lot and the South Main?
The music part.
Okay, those are the only 2 that the city is involved in, and because everything else would have to be private property. So it seems to me that then any arrangement of a food truck would be mostly a private agreement between the person who owned that property and the food truck, like if it were a restaurant or something else, if they had some land that they were doing something and they wanted a food truck there, they thought it would be a good idea, that would have to be a private agreement between the 2 of them. And the only thing that we would then have jurisdiction over, and is this true, would be like if it conformed to Board of Health regulations or something like that.
Right now, our peddler ordinance prevents them from just setting up.
Yeah, they would have to be on private property and would have to be in agreement with the owner of that property
They'd still
at the owner's instigation.
They'd still be in violation, more than likely, of the peddler ordinance, even if they were on private property at this point.
But it seems to me that we would be interfering with the owner of the private property if we prevented them by ordinance from making this agreement if they saw some value.
We prevent private property owners from doing lots of things on their property.
But I'm just trying to be fair about this. If we've had an event or something, and there would be a situation where the presence of a food truck there would enhance the value or the revenue possibilities of that event, like the car show, the Pine Mountain Jamboree parking lot is private property. If they wanted to have a food truck up there to add to the excitement of whatever they were doing, or if they were having a chili cook-off or whatever.
Having a rock quarry on my property might be very much in value to me, but the city prevents me from having a rock quarry by saying we cannot have blasting within the city limits.
But that's a perpetual thing. That doesn't have a time limit on it.
A food truck wouldn't either. If you, by what you're saying, as long as they wanted it, they could have it.
Once again, I reiterate that
Yeah.
These are questions that we are having amongst ourselves, and we're taking Steve's time, and he's been gracious enough to come down here tonight.
Joyce, do you have anything more for Steve?
No, it's just that I'm concerned that I don't want us invading a property owner's right to manage his property.
Okay. Well, we can take that up into a workshop.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to bring up. When this started and we had the first workshop, you said that once we reached a certain point, you would probably assemble a workshop on this topic to make recommendations back. And so I think I'm just going to wait your workshop and would hope that somebody for sure from planning and council is represented on there.
Our next, from what I'm hearing, and we can have a motion for that, would be a council workshop to establish parameters, and we'd have the planning involved.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay. We'll do
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second, and we got discussion on the workshop.
Just to clarify the potential parameters, that it may happen, we may recommend it, and we may not. That has not been determined
That's right.
at this time. I want to keep that clear.
The only thing, in my suggestion, was taking it to the Planning Commission, would make sure the Planning Commission was okay.
I think the Planning Commission could be involved.
And they have given us a recommendation. Now it's up to the council to either decide to proceed in a workshop, and if we proceed, the parameters on that.
Would it hurt to have planning with us
Which,
on the workshop?
they
That's
would
what I was
they
going
would
to
be
ask.
involved with
Would
it.
that they will be involved?
Yeah,
Steve, or
we'd
somebody?
invite-
I think planning would be, I mean, a lot of what you've discussed at the table tonight, we've already discussed, and even the concept of franchising by limiting licenses and things, that would be a way of franchising. But anyway, we would be more than happy to be a part of whatever.
Good.
Okay. Joint effort would be quicker.
So if that's okay, we got a motion and second, and if the council approves it, then I'll have Kim set up a workshop schedule for us that we can all attend. And this will be for the council, with the Planning Commission's representation.
Do you want the two interested drivers right now?
Not at this point, I don't think so. I mean, they're open, it's going to be an open meeting, so they're welcome to attend, but it's a workshop for the council. So, all right, everybody understood the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. Thank you very much
Okay,
for your
thank
work.
you.
We appreciate it. All right, our next item under new business is we have actually the next two. We got a resolution number 1 and resolution number 2. These are for grants. They may look alike, but basically resolution number 1, and we'll take them one at a time. But I just kind of, before we get into discussion, let you know, one is for, there are two different grants. One is from FEMA and the other one is from Rural Development Association. One is for the whole kit and caboodle and the other one is only for a partial. So that's the difference between the two grants, but we need both of them to be submitted, a resolution from the council for both so we can submit them. Anyway, I can...
And hope we get them.
Yeah. Mr. McClung.
I make a motion, I'd like motion to discuss resolution number 1.
Second.
Okay. The resolution number 1 is a FEMA grant, and its total amount is $294,000, and it's for all of it. Now, that is a matching from FEMA. The good news is it's only 5% match.
Yes.
Which is approximately $14,715. If we got the grant, we would have to come back and amend our budget, of course, to take that into consideration at that point. But this is for all of our life safety, self-contained breathing apparatus that we desperately need and we have to have eventually. So right now we've got in our budget, I think 10, purchase of 10, at $8,000 a piece. They get expensive real quick. So if we get this, then we're in good shape. Yes, sir.
You said we actually had in our operating budget to buy 10 at this point? That was in our capital budget,
That's in our capital budget.
which really comes out of our reserves because we really don't have a
Well,
capital
no,
budget.
this is really going to come out of, we're lumping a loan together, and we're
That's
taking that.
right.
Yes,
That's
so-
loan. Okay.
Yeah.
That's loan. So technically, we're not going back into our
No,
reserves.
no.
Okay. Got to be just real clear.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
Mr. McClung?
I make a motion to assign this resolution a number and read it for passage.
Second.
Okay, got any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call, sorry. We'll do it by roll call.
Mr. McClung?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Ms. Eller?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
6-0. Resolution number will be 676, a resolution authorizing the Chief of Eureka Springs Fire Department to apply for and, if awarded, accept a grant from the 2016 Assistance to Firefighters Grant. Whereas the expected life span of the fire department's self-contained breathing apparatus bottles shall expire in 3 years, and whereas the department's self-contained breathing apparatus have shown increasing maintenance costs due to their advanced age, and whereas the department is unable to provide all of its members with current firefighting personnel protective gear. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, that the Chief of the Fire Department is hereby authorized to apply for and, if awarded, accept a grant from the 2016 Assistance to Firefighters Grant, AFG, which is funded through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, with the city's matching portion of 5% in the amount of $14,715 for a total amount not to exceed $294,286 for the purpose of purchasing personal protective equipment and self-contained breathing apparatus. The grant will require a match of 5% by the city, which will be sought in the fiscal year 2016 capital budget.
All right. Let me get a motion to discuss resolution number 2.
So moved.
Second.
All right. This is basically the rural development grant, which is a smaller grant, and it's only going to be able to be a portion by a smaller number of units. And unfortunately, it's also got a higher matching on it. It's 25% match. But again, it's if we get it, then we won't have to borrow as much money. Mr. McClung?
Is this for the initial 10 units?
Yes, smaller units.
Oh, it is for the smaller units?
Yeah.
What would happen if we got both grants?
We won't get both this grant. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll be notified on
Makes
this
sense to
grant
me.
earlier than the next grant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the one we won't know until late fall.
Well, that brings up a good point, that why would we want to take, if the smaller one comes up before the bigger one, why would we necessarily want to take the
Because we
smaller
may
one?
not get the big one.
Well, I
think the smaller
understand,
one's
but do
first.
we have to accept it and then
No, we don't have to accept it. We don't have to
Can
accept it.
we get approved for it and
We can decline it later?
I don't
Yeah,
know what
can
the
we wait
time
and
limit
see?
is.
We can decline it if we get the bigger one.
Bob, do you
You
know?
may not know, by the time we get the bigger one, which will be this fall, may be too late to decline the smaller one. Now, we can decline the smaller one.
You need to come up, Bob, you
Then
need
what's
to come up
the point?
here.
Ooh.
Sorry.
what's the point?
So basically,
too
it's a
soft-spoken.
toss of the dice.
Toss of dice.
You might get more equipment that, it might end up that we get more equipment that the city won't have to purchase later.
But we'd have 25% and then 5%, so we would actually be coughing up more money when we might
If we-
not have needed it. But that, I understand.
If we do both.
Yes, sir.
But might help prevent us from you guys spending more money later.
That's true.
And I'm not exactly certain at this point While we certainly can decline to accept that grant, the first one, the smaller one with the 25% match, I don't know that we can wait until the FEMA grant, the large one with the 5% match, finalizes.
Okay.
I can check those dates, and I'll get back with you on that, but I'm not certain at this point.
So what you're recommending is to make the application for both, and if we get the smaller one, to take it.
Yes, that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and then forget the FEMA.
No.
No, don't forget the
No.
FEMA. The FEMA grant is for 200,
Well, yeah, but
But if we
Uh,
accept the first one,
we
we
need
can't get
how
the
many?
second.
$294,000
But so
total, and
I thought you said you couldn't
we
get
would we would only spend
we might be-
14%.
Can we get both?
As far as
we-
I'm aware, we can
Okay,
get
so if
both.
we're
Oh.
approved for both, that's
That's
where
what-
we got screwed up.
We just have
We thought we
25
had
and
to do one.
5% we coughed up. That's
I think
all.
we can do both,
Okay.
because one grant is through FEMA, and one grant is through the Arkansas Rural USDA.
Yeah, yes.
And so they don't compete. Right. So I believe we can get both.
Okay. That's what
And-
we need you to
And
verify.
if we get both, and if we accept both, then while that might seem redundant here, it's going to prevent our city from spending more money on something down the road that we would be getting with this, yes.
So what I'm assuming we would do then, because it's also a duplication in product, that if we got the first one and we were fortunate enough to get the FEMA grant as well, that we would reduce it by $80,000 because we'd have already purchased that part of it. Is that not correct?
That maybe could be done if that's the will of the council.
Well, I think what Mr. McClung's saying is the 285,000, how many total units do we need? Do you remember?
I don't have all of those numbers. But it's not only self-contained breathing apparatus, it's
35?
also personal protective equipment, turnouts,
40,
and
okay.
other.
Right, but we understand that, but the original is for 10 SCBA's, 80, which is going to be an $80,000 purchase. That's what we,
Only about 8, yes.
or 8 or 10, whichever it is. I mean, but that's,
And we're applying for a total grant of $65,000.
right, but we need $80,000. So we'd have to come up with a difference on that, on those initial units.
And this grant would reduce the amount of money that we then have
Right,
to borrow.
well, I understand
to do-
that, I understand that. But then, if we got approved for the second grant,
Yes, sir.
then that's also, what we have just purchased is also figured into that figure.
Now, the second grant would only buy us 35 of them. So we're still, those 8 would give us a total of 42, and we need 40. So, yeah, we would be...
Having those
35
two
plus-
That's
extra
it, okay.
is going to save us down the road.
2
Because-
spares.
We got two spares.
Got it.
The first
works
grant
out.
will buy us
And that's-
roughly
Don't worry about the federal government, they'll just keep printing more money.
6, and then the second unit will get us 35 units, 6 to 8 units, 6 or 7 units. But so anyway, we may have 1 or 2 units extra.
Look at it this way, Carrie, it'll make the fire department great again.
Joyce?
Now,
What are the politics in this? Is this an Arkansas grant? Who are we competing with for the FEMA grant?
One grant is through FEMA.
Okay, but is that, are we competing nationwide for that grant through FEMA? Is
Yes.
that, we're competing with it with
Yes.
nationwide?
Yes, it's the same grant that, and the same grant writer that helped us acquire the ladder truck that we just
Okay.
bought. $1 million unit for $38,000.
Okay, I'm just wondering whether, considering Arkansas politics, I'm wondering whether we have a strike against us, or is it a possibility that we'll get the larger grant? Is there anything blocking
Are you
it?
saying getting the smaller grant might be a strike against us?
Okay.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I'm just wondering, a lot of times these things are decided ahead of time, and there's politics involved. And I just wondered what our competition is for the larger grant, if there is any, if that's the way this is being handled.
Every fire department in the country is competition for us on the larger grant.
Okay.
The only competitors for the smaller grant are in Arkansas.
Okay.
Yes.
That does put a bit, I think we should go for both of them.
And also, he's right, it's within Arkansas, and it's also within this district.
Yeah, I should go for both of them.
Yeah. Mr. McClung.
All right, I'm still not got this completely square in my mind, and that, so we've got 8 units at $80,000, that's $10,000 a unit, is that not correct?
But we're only getting 65,000.
I understand that, but that's what the cost is, that's what we set aside, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so far, we got that established.
Okay.
Now, the second thing is that we're going to, if we were fortunate enough to get $65,000, we'd come up with the other $25,000. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, whatever the
15,000.
difference is, yes.
15,000, that's correct.
Yes.
That was kind of a little too much money. Okay, so, and then that would still be the 80 for those units.
Yes.
Okay, so and if we get another 295,000,
Yes, sir.
how are you going to get 35 units when they're $10,000 a unit? That's 350,000.
8,000 a unit.
Well, then you're going to get 10 for 80, or are you going to get 8 for 80?
Wait a minute, they're 8,000 a unit, I think, is what we were.
I think you're right on that, but I don't have those numbers in my hand.
Okay.
I thought
All right.
that
Well, say
was resolved.
okay. Say it's so. Say if 35 units at $8,000. That's almost.
285,000.
Okay. So you're not getting anything else. That's all you're getting is the SCBA's. You're not other equipment.
Depends on what we actually, when we bid it out, it can come in cheaper than what we think they're going to cost us now. Because if we get approval for it, then we'll send out bids to various companies to compete against each other, and the price might come down some, or it might not.
Okay. But it's strictly for SCBA's.
Well, it's written for personal protective equipment and SCBA's.
And that's where the $8,000 was for personal equipment and SBA per unit.
Like turnouts and helmets and so forth.
So the SCBA setup itself is not $8,000.
Correct.
I
think that's correct.
I don't want to lie to you, Terry. I don't have those numbers right in front of me.
Okay.
And, but I think the mayor's correct.
I mean, I think we need to approve it anyway. But I just don't think I don't have a clear understanding of if what we're getting and if we should be fortunate to get both of them.
From what I remember in our capital budget that we were talking about, $8,000 per unit was for breathing apparatus and other personal equipment.
I thought it was breathing apparatus only.
I think it was for the other.
It might be.
The ordinance is written for personal protective and self-contained
But I may be
breathing
wrong, too.
and that's the intent too. We have turnout gear that we have people in right now that we can't even send them to the fire academy because the fire academy says that stuff's too old and no good. You have to get some newer gear.
So if
we can't replace it at this point.
And then if we refinance, we won't be using that $80,000. We'll have it for something else.
Correct.
Like
We use
the bank
15
or
of
something.
them. You use 15
maybe.
of them.
15 and maybe 5, you're right.
Yeah.
Or 25 and 5 or whatever it was. Okay.
Did we assign, I'll make a motion to assign this resolution a number and read it for passage.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
Thank you, James.
Now I got it.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Seller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. McClung?
Uh-huh.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Ms. Schneider?
Yes.
6-0. Resolution number will be 677. A resolution authorizing the Chief of Eureka Springs Fire Department to apply for and, if awarded, accept a grant from USD Rural Development Whereas the expected lifespan of the fire department's self-contained breathing apparatus bottle shall expire in 3 years, and whereas the department's self-contained breathing apparatus have shown increasing maintenance costs due to their advanced age, and whereas the department is unable to provide all of its members with current firefighting personal protective gear. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, that the Chief of the Fire Department is hereby authorized to apply for and, if awarded, accept a grant from the USDA Rural Development, which is funded through the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, with the city's matching portion of 25% in the amount of $16,250 for a total not to exceed $65,000 for the purpose of purchasing personal protective equipment and self-contained breathing apparatus. The grant will require a match of 25% by the city, which will be sought in the fiscal year 2016 budget.
All right, thank you, guys.
So,
All right, our next item is the budget review. Get a motion to discuss.
So moved.
second.
First grant.
Last month, well, it was last month, come to think of it.
January,
Yeah,
February.
I got kind of all screwed up and everything. We're talking about still the same budget that I was talking about the last time, where I was talking about, it appears from our January budget that we're in, we're operating pretty near the projected revenues and expenses, but we did have some items in through there that we are noting that our revenue was running under the expectations for the January, but and the revenue in the general fund was running under on some of these items also. And the street funds were, revenue was under, but so was our expenses. And so, back up here too, our general funds, expenses, and revenues. Our revenues were under, and our expenses were a little bit higher. So we were over in our general overall. The street funds were coming out pretty good, and the same thing with the Fund 80, which is your water and sewer. The transit got all kind of messed up, mainly because we were purchasing a tram and through there. And so that threw out, I think, our budget on the transit. Overall, we were expenses were more than our revenues by 7%. And this was going back into January. So again, it's what we're dealing with January. We'll have the new budgets for
February.
for February in your boxes tomorrow.
Okay.
Up there. But anyway, Mr. McClellan.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, then we will review that at the next meeting this month. Isn't that what?
We will have the workshop.
30
and-
minutes before.
Yes. And
30
we-
minutes before.
Right.
5:30, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll discuss that up there at that meeting, and then we'll come up, then any questions and anything, we can go ahead and try to get them resolved for you guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody?
Just tight.
It's very tight.
Just tight, folks.
And we knew that when we were doing it. January, it was we don't expect a lot in January. Of course, also remember too, a lot of this is coming back from December too, so everything's kind of catching up at the same time. But everything that I've seen so far in our projections, it's nothing to get excited about, but it looks like sales tax is up for the city and for the county quite a bit. But again, our only sales tax is tourism. And so we got to still keep it tight.
Which brings up another question then, since you brought up revenue. Aren't we supposed to at some point have some discussion about revenue enhancement?
I am, and I'm still waiting on one more figure
Good.
to make sure, because I want to give the council all options on our revenues in various ways, or what we're up against in water and sewer and our taxes. So I was hoping to get that this time, and it won't be next week because or the next meeting I will be out at our next meeting, and so David will be sitting in as Mayor Pro Tem, but the meeting after that I'll be here, and hopefully I'll have all the numbers together and we'll talk about where our future is going to be going, what we need to do.
I'm sure glad you're going to be back for that.
Yes, I wouldn't leave that for you. All right. If there isn't anything else, our next item is the B&B licensing.
Motion to discuss.
Second.
Okay. You want to start off?
Yeah, I would. I got the honor of going to the last planning meeting, and the reason I had gone, one, I was invited to discuss the Clean City Ordinance, which we did talk about, but that's not the thrust of adding this to the agenda. That did go well. What I was concerned about was I was picking up a lot of feedback from various sources within the city that the concern about the issue of B&B licenses. At some point in the past, I don't have the whole story, and I'm not even too sure it's really relevant at this point in time, but at some point planning and the council put a ban on tourist lodging in the residential areas within the city. At some point, they also worked on the issue of B&B licenses in residential areas within the city or the historic district. And with the B&Bs, they had manager or employee on site, I forget the exact word for that, serve breakfast, and you had to have a 200-foot rule that you couldn't be closer than 200 foot or you could seek a variance. And planning has a very specific list of things that they look at when they are discussing a variance to waive the 200-foot rule. Was a little concerned about it. That topic kind of drifted off a little bit, and some concern because I also got into the issue of enforcement. What was looking like that there were, not looking like what's being reported to me, and I am aware of several B&Bs in town that do not have somebody on site, do not serve breakfast, and actually applied for and received a B&B license when in fact they really call their license tourist licenses when they're out and about. So I was getting a little concerned about that. In the process of all of this going on, the city picked up and one of the city employees did, and we started discussing the concept of Airbnb, vacation rental by owners, known as VRBO, and HomeAway, which seemed to be very popular. Airbnb is starting to kind of look like the Uber taxi thing, except that the state hasn't forced us on it, but it is just another option for people to list their properties. In the process of that, the city employee here jumped on the Airbnb, and lo and behold, in less than 24 hours, found 4 illegal operating lodging establishments that had no business license, were not collecting CAPC taxes, were not paying commercial taxes for their property, and were not paying commercial insurance rates. They were really running illegally and running at a very reduced rate. So the city has, I understand, is taking the appropriate action towards those. I don't know how far that'll go as far as licenses or so. 2 of those establishments have made it well known that they're getting ready to go to planning, even though they ran illegal lodging, and they're going to ask to start the process to get a B&B license. Well, now, if they were tourists and running wrong, and then they're going to come down for a B&B, it implies to me that there might be some problems with the B&B licensure in residential areas. And the playing field between banning tourists and leaving B&B licenses open looks like it's starting to be usurped and misused. So what I was going to ask tonight for consideration and to allow planning the opportunity to get a hold of this situation and make a recommendation back to council is that we put a moratorium on B&B licensure for 4 months until this issue can be worked through in a legitimate and logical manner that is equitable and fair.
I would second that. Sounds like it's getting really confusing.
Mr. McClung?
So these that are operating illegally, if they come in and make application, they're going to be told, if they haven't already been told, to cease.
If they're
And-
illegal, yes, and they can't operate.
Yeah, because they can't be grandfathered. I mean, they're not operating legally anyway. So that's not that's not any kind of logic or reasoning or justification for them to continue what they're doing. I'm just trying to be clear that I am for myself.
The letter was
As
sent
everyone
out
else.
that if they're operating in a zone where it's illegal for them to operate, they have to cease and desist. If they are operating in a zone where they could operate for the residential as a B&B within the 200 foot, then they have the option. They have to stop, but they have the option of applying to become legal.
And that is the guidelines of a B&B, not tourist lodging.
Correct. Tourist lodgings are illegal in residential zones.
Just making that clarification as well.
Yeah, and that was the concern, was that if you're running an illegal tourist lodging and you all of a sudden look over here and you think, well, I'll just go get a B&B license. Because we already have B&Bs in this town that are not being enforced. They're not. There's not a person on site. They're not serving breakfast. And so we already have some issues going on there. It's a big mess right now. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just confused. Are you have the rules for the B&B license, breakfast and manager on site and not within 200 feet. Are you saying that's not enough? Or you want more rules?
I don't know for sure. I know that those rules are not being enforced, and there is a large number of them that don't even comply to that now. And in the past, they actually came and had a tourist license, but they came and got a B&B license, and they have never run it as a B&B, and it's not enforced.
James? Oops.
I always hesitate to put in moratoriums because it's pretty draconian implement. In essence, you are penalizing the legitimate people who are seeking out a B&B in this community. It also affects the real estate business. If we're talking about less than a handful, then they should be taken on an individual basis and dealt with. But to put out a citywide restriction that would penalize the legitimate people that are seeking those, I don't feel that's fair to them.
Mickey?
My understanding of the situation is because we did a stop on the tourism business in regards to lodging, people are using this as a loophole to bypass that, and so they're calling it a B&B, but they're not taking any of the legitimate steps. And the 4 months that he's asking for is for the city to have time to go find these ones and shut them down and say, you're illegal, you're breaking the law, and it's a matter of getting it all cleaned up so in 4 months, when we restart doing B&B licenses, the playing field is clean, clear, and ready to go, as opposed to being the hodgepodge that it has become in the last couple of years.
Well, I don't understand. I hear clear rules that are not being enforced.
No, they're doing a tourism thing. It's very clear. To have a B&B, you've got to have somebody living
That's
there
what the
and giving breakfast.
B&B rules are very clear. People are,
Right, and they're
but we're
ignoring
not
it.
enforcing them. But so why don't we just start enforcing them? Why do we need
A
to
lot of
stop
people-
issuing licenses?
Apparently, a lot of people haven't even applied for a B&B license.
Well, but-
They're advertising it, but they're not.
But why do you have to
legally doing
stop
it.
B&B licensing in order to go after
So
those people?
we can, if you drive down the block and you see 3 B&Bs,
Uh-huh.
if you don't put a moratorium for a little while, you could drive down that same block and have 6.
No, you have rules in place of 200
I mean,
foot.
that's what I'm saying. It's gonna be more confusing than what it already is.
How could you have 6? You already have a rule that can't be within
That people
200
are
feet of each other.
ignoring.
But I'm confused.
They're operating without a license.
I'm
You're right.
confused. Yeah.
James?
From what I'm hearing, there's not a lot. And if we haven't identified a structure that we think is operating illegally, why are we trying to penalize them if they're trying to legitimately apply for a license? I don't get that.
There's one person that's in the process, and the moratorium wouldn't apply to them because they are in the process. The variance that planning looked at the other night was coming back to the agenda. That one would obviously be in works before if a moratorium was considered. So it wouldn't affect that one. If you look back over a period of time, there's hardly been any applications for B&B licenses. This issue is only dealing with the potential movement of people that have been operating totally illegally, seeking B&B licenses, just for long enough for planning to have gotten a handle on the situation and made some recommendations. So it's not a huge number of people by any means, but at the same time it would be very unusual to reward somebody who operates illegally, knowingly illegally, and doesn't pay any CAPC taxes or state taxes or do anything else. And as a matter of fact, even after, if they've already received the letters, they're still taking reservations.
James?
We're still not addressing the issue of people operating illegally. We're only delaying their ability to apply for a license by 4 months.
As far as I know, I think you're correct. We've sent out those letters. If anybody knows of any other instances of businesses operating illegally, if they'll let me know or the City Hall know, we'll send out the letters and start the enforcement. Sometimes,
Okay.
and David pointed out, and I appreciate that, the Airbnb, is that, which is something we weren't aware of, and there's another one you just said,
Home away.
HomeAway is
HomeAway.
also VVRO,
Oh,
and
you
I think they
the
just
VVRO we've checked, and we check on existing B&Bs annually. Now, what I've directed Glenda to do is start checking them on a semi-annual, twice a year, instead of just in January when we do the business occupation license, or the occupation, to try to see if there's anybody. But if we know of somebody, or if we're aware of somebody not being a resident manager or not living up to that, let me know, and we will go in and try to enforce the ordinance.
provide you the list.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that to try and enforce it is the right term.
Well, no,
I think
we would enforce it.
And at the same time, I mean, I think that's the whole deal. Is we got the rules and we got to follow up with them, and as far as the other, there are existing properties that are run correctly and could come on the market, and those have to be, whenever they change hands, they have to get approval for those anyway, and they're never denied. I've never known one to be denied, but I'd hate that to jeopardize, any kind of moratorium jeopardize that part of it as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not really.
Most of the ones that are for sale right now are grandfathered, and that doesn't require the CUP process.
Joyce?
Is what we're complaining about somebody who owns a house in town and doesn't live in it and is renting it out on a short-term basis, like for less than a month or 2 at a time? Is that what the problem is? I'm having trouble getting a handle on the problem. Do we define what is a short-term rental of a house?
Done that.
And how long is the short-term? I mean, how long do you have to rent a house out for it not to be short-term? I guess that's my question.
More than 31 days.
More than a month, okay. So what we are trying to regulate are people who rent out their houses or their, for some sort of vacant facility for less than a month.
Overnight lodging within the residential neighborhoods.
Okay, and that's going on with people that they don't have a license to do this. Is that the problem? Oh,
We've discovered.
okay, but are we on top of that? We're taking inventory of that now? Oh, well,
Well, as far as we know.
okay.
I mean, if there's more out there, I mean, we certainly want to, and that, we depend a lot upon the public to notify us, because a lot of times
Yeah.
we're not aware of things that are operating. So if we're notified, then we can take the appropriate measures and send out the letters to stop and cease and desist.
Okay.
But there was two issues. There was the one is the illegal, and the other one is the lack of enforcement of the rules that have always been there. So for B&Bs, with management and breakfast and having somebody there, having come and got a B&B license, then closing your B&B for less than 6 months is fine, because you don't lose your tax abatement or anything for that. But then allowing somebody who lives off premises to run over and take care of your tourists while you're out of the country, there's some pretty strong violations going on. So that the issue of enforcement is important, as well as shutting down illegals.
Certainly. And again, you know, if we're notified, then if a complaint is filed, then we can act on it. But we have to be aware of it. A lot of times we don't know, because that is almost a neighborhood situation, that we have to, you know, to tell us when somebody is not living on the premise.
I understand. In the 8 years I've been here, the enforcement has been weak.
Well,
So.
could be. James?
I would even encourage, quarterly inspection of the sites. I mean, it doesn't take that long to look through those sites to see there, because in 6 months, somebody could be just going, well, they're going to do it January, and then they're going to do it in June. So if I run in February, but if we did it irregularly on a quarterly basis,
Spot check.
And if we can also do it random
Exactly.
basis, yeah, that might help. So
yeah, TripAdvisor is another one that is the same type of thing. Same as Airbnb and VBR and HomeAway.
Expedia, TripAdvisor, Travelocity, all of those sites usually come under the rental, the one-night rental.
Yeah.
But again, I would encourage everybody, including the council and the people that are watching, to notify us if they think something is operating illegally, and we can investigate and take appropriate action at that point.
Okay.
And if they are operating illegal and we send a letter and they don't stop, then we can get our city attorney involved.
Then I'll pull that motion back, and we'll see what happens.
And I'll pull my second.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Thank you, guys. Agenda setting.
No, nothing.
Mr. McClellan?
No, sir?
James? David?
Oh, since I'm going to be sitting there, nothing.
Vicki?
No, but I have had a lot of people complain that we're getting boring, so we've got to do something about this.
Oh, swell.
Boring can be good.
Or I just
I don't have any time to read Joyce's book if they want excitement.
Or we can set aside a time during the council meeting where I will read to you all.
Okay.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Only the juicy part.
Kind of you.
We don't need that on the agenda. Okay, not this time.
I don't have anything to put on the agenda.
All right. Well, I don't either. I have a few announcements to make. We've got some activities starting to come up. Let me find them here somewhere. Oh, there we go. Upcoming events. March 15th and 16th, Carving in the Ozarks from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We will have Carving in the Ozarks, the Victorian Inn parking lot. That's always a lot of fun going on. Also, the 15th, EUREKA Trio, the classical string trio, will be playing at Thorncrown. That's a Wednesday, I believe. And then they will,
At 7.
at 7 o'clock. And then at the 18th, they'll be playing at the auditorium. And that's a great, the girls, 3 girls,
Seven.
trio, obviously, string instruments, and they're just fantastic at 7 o'clock at the auditorium. Victorian Classic will be on the 19th. They'll be running a route down through downtown from 7 a.m., starting off 7 a.m. for all you runners out there, to noon. And then March 25th, 26th, we'll be celebrating Jesus Parade at 2 p.m., starting and going down through the Basin Park.
When is that?
That'll be the 25th of March, 26th.
Well,
I don't know, the 26th, what's one day?
Good Friday is 25, 26 is Saturday.
It must be Saturday, it's when the Friday. Yeah, but they will be in the park on the Friday. And then April 1st through April 3rd, Diversity Weekend. And other than that, that's all I have. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Wait a minute, what happened to council comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me.
Don't be so rushed.
Joyce, I'll start off and go around.
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry, pardon me. I jumped right over the council comments.
Yes, you
Maybe.
did, and boy, I've got a big one. I would like to congratulate my husband, who has managed to stay married to me for 33 years, come St. Pat's Day on Wednesday.
Cool.
Ooh, that is a big one.
Congratulations.
Congratulate him. That's it.
David?
He should be paying me for taking care of him.
James?
Second Saturday in April, I'd like to remind everybody that the concert in Basin Park will be John Hammond. He's one of the preeminent blues artists in the world. If anybody was lucky to have seen him in the park when he appeared 20 years ago. This is brought to you by the CAPC. Anybody that likes good music, especially blues, will be thrilled at the type of and the quality of music he performs. And he's an exceptional artist, and it's free.
Mr. Gonzalez?
No, sir.
No.
All right, now then I want to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.